She's the worker bee. Useful, not important. That was the text Marcus sent about me in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see. My name is Nora Bellamy. I'm 37, and for 15 years I've built other people's perfect weddings. On mine, I counted 4 empty chairs at the altar. For best friends since college. For emergencies, texted within minutes of each other. What came up was Priya's rooftop birthday, champagne towers, a live band, all 4 of them raising glasses across town while I promised forever to a quiet man they privately called the Nobody. I didn't cry. I married him anyway, surrounded by people who actually showed up. Here's what they didn't know. That quiet man ran a private fund, and his fund was the only thing standing between Priya's startup and collapse. In 3 weeks, a due diligence file would land on his desk with one name at the top, mine. The same name they'd mocked for 15 years. You need to hear how loud silence can get. The studio smells like steam and lily pollen most mornings, but on a Tuesday in March it smelled like burnt coffee, because I'd forgotten the pot again. I run Bellamy events out of a converted loft on 9th Street for 100 square feet of fabric swatches and seating charts, and I've spent 15 years making other people's days perfect. I'm good at it. I'm 37 years old, and I have built exactly 112 weddings from scratch, and I have never once forgotten a boutonniere. I want to tell you about my friends first because you need to understand the shape of the whole before I show you what fell into it. Priya Kohli, Marcus Reed, Dana Witt, and me, we met sophomore year at a dorm study table for girls and one guy who couldn't keep his hands off the group chat even at 2 a.m. 15 years. Priya became a founder, some clean energy logistics thing that got written up in a magazine once. Marcus went into pharmaceutical sales, drives a leased BMW he complains about. Dana does marketing for a hotel chain. And me, I do weddings. Somewhere along the way, the wedding girl became shorthand in that group for the one who handles things. I handled Dana's wedding in full. 62 guests, a barn venue in the Hudson Valley, for months of vendor calls, seating charts revised 11 times because her mother-in-law kept changing her mind about the Kowalskis. I built her a floral arch out of eucalyptus and ranunculus that cost me $800 of my own money and materials, and when I sent the final invoice, just for the flowers, nothing for my time, Dana texted back a laughing emoji and said, "You're the best, you know that? Seriously don't know what I'd do without you." I never got paid for the flowers. I never brought it up again. Marcus borrowed $6,000 from me in October, 4 years ago now. 3 months, tops, he said, sitting on my kitchen counter, swinging his legs like a kid. Landlord's holding my deposit hostage, it's insane. I wrote the check that night. I still have the string of texts where he calls it the loan, present tense, like it's an ongoing arrangement rather than a debt with a body count of 48 unpaid months. Every Christmas, he sends me a bottle of the same mediocre bourbon. I've done the math. At $40 a bottle for Christmases, he's paid me back 160 of the 6,000. I'm not telling you this because I want pity. I'm telling you because I didn't see it either for years. I thought this was what loyalty looked like, showing up, absorbing the cost, never being the one who needed anything back. I thought if I kept being useful, eventually someone would notice I was also a person. Here's the night I found out otherwise. It was a Thursday, late April, and I was lying in bed scrolling through vendor invoices on my laptop when a notification slid across the top of my phone screen. Group chat. Priya, Marcus, Dana, and a 4th friend from school, Leah, who mostly lurks. The preview line read, "LOL, yes, exactly. She's the worker bee. Useful, not important." And my thumb moved before my brain caught up, tapping into the thread instead of swiping it away. I wasn't supposed to see it. I know that now. But there it was, glowing in my dark bedroom. 41 unread messages stacked above the one that had just landed. I scrolled up. My hands were steady, which surprised me later, thinking back on it. Marcus, 10 days earlier. Anyone else notice Nora's still doing the same rented apartment thing after like a decade, lol. Some people just don't level up, I guess. Priya, be nice. She's useful though. She'll do my launch party for free if I ask right. Dana, the worker bee, she'll never say no. Marcus, the worker bee.
Dead.
Accurate though. I read it twice. Then a third time because some part of me wanted to find the version where it was a joke about someone else, some other friend, some misunderstanding I could set down and walk away from. There wasn't one. My name was 3 lines up, spelled correctly, in context, followed by a laughing emoji from Priya. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. I got up, went to the kitchen, and ran the tap until the water turned cold, and I drank a full glass standing at the sink in the dark, the way you do when your body needs something to do, and your mind hasn't caught up with your hands yet. Then I picked the phone back up because something about the timing was bothering me. The messages I'd scrolled through weren't from that night. They were 10 days old, which meant that little preview banner, the one that had slid across my screen and pulled me in, hadn't been triggered by a new message in that thread at all. Someone had opened the chat on their end, scrolled back to that exact exchange, and reacted to it. Just now. At 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, with a laughing emoji, from a phone that knew exactly which words would land on my screen if I happened to be awake. I met Julian on a Tuesday in March, at a tasting room in the Flatiron district that smelled like beeswax candles and the particular anxiety of a caterer who's 40 minutes behind schedule. "You're the wedding planner," he said. Not a question. "I'm the wedding planner," I said. "You're the client who canceled twice." He didn't apologize. He just looked at me, a long, unhurried look, the kind that made me feel like he was reading something instead of looking at someone, and said, "I don't like weddings. My sister's getting married in September, and I need it to not embarrass either of us." I liked him immediately. He was the first client in 3 years who talked to me like I had a spine. We spent 6 weeks in conference rooms and flower markets. He never once mentioned what he did for a living. When I asked, on a Thursday in April, over paper cups of coffee at a folding table covered in seating charts, he said, "I move money around for people who have too much of it," and then asked me whether I thought peonies would survive an outdoor September ceremony in New York. I told him no. He believed me. That was the whole thing, really. He believed me the first time, without making me repeat myself. His sister's wedding went off without a hitch in September. He asked me to dinner in October. By December we were engaged, in his kitchen, with a ring that didn't announce itself, the way he didn't. I posted one photo. Just one. My hand, his hand, no caption. The group chat woke up fast. "Priya. Wait, who is this? Priya. Nora? Engaged? Since when?" I typed it out plainly. Met him through work. His name is Julian. We're getting married in June. Marcus. LOL, okay, but what does he do? I stared at that question longer than I should have. It would have taken 4 words to answer it honestly. Private equity. Runs a fund. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed the small version instead, the one I always typed, "He's in finance," and hit send before I could think better of it. Priya, OMG, a finance guy. Groundbreaking. Marcus, let me guess. Accountant. Beige tie guy. Calculates everyone's split at brunch.
Donna.
I set the phone face down on my desk and looked at the ceiling for a second. 15 years of this. 15 years of handing them the smallest possible version of my own life, so there'd be nothing left to pick apart. I could have written 4 more words. He sits on boards. He turned down a magazine profile last spring because he called it undignified, and watched the whole chat recalibrate in real time. I didn't. It was easier to let the joke land than to sit through whatever they'd do with the truth. Priya sent a bouquet emoji and nothing else. Marcus sent a thumbs up. Dana called me. Actually called and said, "I'm happy for you, Nora, really," in a voice that sounded like she meant it. I sat down on the studio floor mid-conversation, surrounded by fabric swatches, phone warm against my ear, and let myself believe, for 4 whole minutes, that this time might be different. I sent the invitations in February. Cream stock letterpress, my own hand on every envelope because I do this for a living and I wanted theirs to look like the others, like they mattered exactly as much. 4th of June, the Hudson Valley, 4 o'clock. All 4 RSVP'd yes within the week. Priya wrote "wouldn't miss IT" in all caps with 3 exclamation points. I screenshotted it without knowing why and dropped it into a folder I hadn't opened since. 3 days before the wedding, I was steaming my own dress in the studio bathroom, phone propped against the mirror, half watching stories while the fabric relaxed under my hand. My sleeve caught the steam and I shook it out, and that's when Priya's account posted. Gold script on a black card. An invitation graphic, her own face at the center of it. Champagne glass raised to the camera. Priya Kohli turns 36. Rooftop. Open bar. June 4th. I read it once. Then I read the date again, out loud, to make sure I hadn't imagined it. June 4th, I said, to the empty bathroom, to the mirror, to nobody. I set the phone down on the edge of the sink, screen still lit, and watched the steam curl off my dress in the glass. My hands had gone still on the fabric. Somewhere down the hall, Colin's voice carried through the studio door. Noor, the florist's online too. And I didn't answer him. Not yet, because I was doing the math one more time just to be sure, and the math came out the same way twice.
Her party.
My wedding. The same afternoon. I did not, for 1 second, believe it was a coincidence. The dress hung on the closet door, catching morning light through the venue's east window. I had exactly 4 hours before I walked into the barn at Hudson Valley Farmstead, and I was sitting in a folding chair while my makeup artist, a woman named B, dabbed concealer under my eyes with a small brush. My phone buzzed on the vanity. Priya. So sorry, Nora. Something huge came up with the launch.
Can't make it today.
Wishing you both so much happiness. I looked at it once. Set it face down. B kept working. 2 minutes later, Marcus. Client emergency. Boss is making me fly to Chicago tonight. Gutted to miss it. You know how it is. I did not know how it was. I had never once, in 15 years, made Marcus fly anywhere. Everything okay? B asked. Fine, I said. Just logistics. The third text came from Dana, 20 minutes later, while I was stepping into the dress and my mother was doing up the row of buttons at my back. My daughter's running a fever. I can't leave her. I'm so sorry. I feel awful. I believed that one a little. Dana had a 6-year-old and a nervous system that still, occasionally, worked like a person's. The fourth text never came at all. The fourth chair, the one for a friend named Ren, who I'd known since freshman orientation and who I'd once driven 4 hours to sit with in a hospital waiting room, just stayed empty, no explanation offered, none required. My mother's hands paused on the last button. That's all of them? That's all of them. She didn't say anything else. She finished the buttons. The ceremony itself I remember in pieces, the way you remember a room lit by candles, not the whole space, just where the light lands. Colin walking me down the aisle because our father had been gone 6 years and there was no one else I'd have wanted. The smell of peonies, slightly too sweet, banked along the aisle in galvanized buckets I'd chosen myself because even at my own wedding I couldn't stop being the planner. Julian standing at the end of it in a charcoal suit, not smiling exactly, just watching me the way he watched everything, like he was taking something in fully before he let himself react to it. I looked past him once at the seats. 4 empty chairs in the second row. White ribbons still tied to the backs, place cards still sitting in them with names printed in calligraphy I'd paid for myself. Priya Kohli. Marcus Reed.
Dana Vit.
Ren say. Do you, Nora, take Julian?
Ido.
My voice didn't shake. I had planned 200 weddings for other people, and I understood, better than almost anyone alive, how to hold a room together with your voice even when your chest feels like it's been scooped out with a spoon. We kissed. People stood. Somebody, I think it was Julian's aunt, was crying in the good way. I did not cry at all. That night, after the last guests had gone and the string lights over the reception tent had been switched off row by row, Colin found me on the porch steps of the farmhouse, my shoes off, my feet aching in the cold grass. You should see something, he said. Or maybe you shouldn't, but I think you need to. He handed me his phone. Priya's Instagram, posted 6 hours ago. A rooftop somewhere in the Flatiron district, string lights of its own, better lights, gold ones. Priya in a champagne-colored dress, arms thrown around Marcus and Dana, all 3 of them laughing at something outside the frame. Champagne flutes raised. The caption read, 36 and thriving. Grateful for my real ones. Ren was tagged in the next photo down mid-toast. The timestamp said 4:12 p.m. My ceremony had started at 4 o'clock. I didn't say anything. I scrolled once, twice, then handed the phone back. Nora, Colin said. I'm not upset, I said, and it came out steadier than I expected, because it was true in a way I hadn't examined yet. Something in me had gone very quiet and very clear, like a pond after the wind stops. Julian came out onto the porch a few minutes later, jacket off, sleeves rolled, holding 2 mugs of the cider someone's aunt had been ladling out of a slow cooker all night. He handed me one without a word, sat down beside me, and looked at the phone still glowing faintly in Colin's hand before Colin locked the screen. What is it? Julian said. Not really a question. Colin explained, briefly, flatly. Julian listened the way he always listened, like he was filing something away rather than reacting to it. When Colin finished, Julian didn't say anything about Priya, or the party, or the empty chairs. He just looked at me for a moment, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. Don't delete those photos, he said. I looked at him, cider warm in my hands, the cold coming up through the porch boards. Why would I delete them? He didn't answer that either. He just took a slow sip of his cider and watched the dark tree line at the edge of the property, like he already knew something about the shape of the next 3 weeks that I did not. The phone rang at 11 at night, our 3rd night on the island, and Julian answered it in the dark with the balcony door open and the sound of the water below us. Vance. He listened. He sat up against the headboard, the sheet pooling at his waist, and reached for the notepad the resort left on the nightstand, the kind with a little embossed palm tree at the top. He wrote 3 words.
Numbers, maybe.
I couldn't see from where I was lying, only the small movement of his hand. Send me the deck tonight, he said. I want Renee's notes by Thursday, not Friday. A pause.
No.
If the churn number doesn't reconcile, I don't care how good the founder story is. He hung up, set the phone face down on the nightstand, the way I'd started noticing he always did, like the call was finished the second the screen went dark. Work. I asked, though I already knew. Someone's always raising money. He said it the way other men might say someone's always mowing their lawn. Ordinary. Unremarkable. I waited for him to say more, a name, a company, anything, but he just reached over and turned off the lamp, and in the dark I heard him exhale like the call had cost him something small. I didn't push. 15 years of not being told things had made me strangely fluent in not asking for them. In the morning he told me anyway, over coffee on the balcony, without my asking. We're looking at 4 companies this quarter. Consumer stuff, mostly. Renee's doing first pass diligence, I do second. He buttered a piece of toast, precise, like it mattered. It's mostly reading. People think it's more interesting than it is. What happens if you say no? Then they don't get the money. He looked at me over the rim of his cup. Sometimes that's the kindest thing you can do for someone. Tell them no before they build a life on top of a lie. I remember thinking that was an odd thing to say about spreadsheets. I didn't ask him to explain it. The ocean was doing something spectacular with the morning light, and I let myself have that instead. My phone buzzed on the table between us.
Group chat.
Marcus. Congrats again, you too. Island looks unreal. Then, for minutes later, Dana. So happy for you, Nora, enjoy. A red heart. No question about the wedding. No mention of the 4 empty chairs. Just the kind of message you send to close the loop on your own conscience. 3 words wide and an inch deep. I typed nothing back for a long moment. Julian was reading something on his tablet, unbothered, and I watched the little dots appear and disappear on my screen as I tried 3 different replies and deleted all of them. In the end, I sent a thumbs up. It felt like the correct amount of effort to match the correct amount of care. Priya's message came separately, not in the group. A private text, 2 days later. Back home, unpacking suitcases in our new kitchen, the tiles still smelling faintly of grout. Hey. Okay, so weird ask, but launch event for the company is coming up fast, and our events girl flaked. Would you be a literal lifesaver and help me pull something together? Nothing crazy, just your magic touch. I'll obviously comp you for the space. I read it twice, standing at the counter with a box cutter still in my hand. Comp me for the space. Not pay me. Comp me, as if my time was a favor she was doing me, letting me stand in a room she'd rented. 15 years ago, I would have said yes before finishing the message. I thought about Dana's wedding, the 60-person seating chart I built at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning, unpaid, because she'd cried on the phone about her mother's expectations. I thought about the $6,000 Marcus still called a loan. I can't do it for free this time, I typed. Happy to send you my day rate if you want to book properly. I didn't add an exclamation point. I didn't apologize for the sentence. I didn't hear back for 2 days. Then Dana forwarded me a screenshot from the group chat, unprompted, with a single line above it. Thought you should see this. Priya had written, "Guess the worker bee finally learned to charge."
Wow.
Marcus had put a laughing emoji under it. Nobody had defended me. Nobody ever really had. I didn't cry over it, not this time. I set the phone on the counter, screen down, the way Julian did, and finished unpacking the box of wedding gifts we still hadn't found homes for, a set of champagne flutes from a great-aunt, a card from a woman whose name I couldn't place. 3 floors up, in the office he hadn't shown me yet, Renee was building a folder for Monday's meeting, printing cover sheets, stapling decks, working her way alphabetically down a short list of 4 companies angling for the same round of money. She put the thickest folder on top, the way she always did with the file she thought would take the longest to argue about. The name on the tab read Kohli Ventures, Priya Kohli, founder and CEO. He didn't look up from the folder right away. That was the first thing I noticed. Julian reading names the way other people read weather reports, no flicker, no tell. We were at the kitchen island, a Tuesday night, the dishwasher running its low hum behind us. I was reheating leftover risotto and half watching him flip pages in that soft lamplight he liked, the one that made the apartment feel smaller than it was. "Kohli," he said. Not a question. Just testing the word. I turned around with the pan still in my hand. What? Priya Kohli, founder of a company called Verdant Circle. Ring a bell? The spoon stopped halfway to the bowl. That's Priya. I set the pan down harder than I meant to, and the clatter filled the kitchen for a second before the dishwasher swallowed it back up. Priya from college. My Priya.
Well.
Not mine. Julian closed the folder with 2 fingers, the way he closed everything, like he didn't want to leave a crease. Small world. Small world. I repeated, and it came out flatter than I intended. I sat down across from him, because my legs wanted to be sitting down. The risotto went cold on the stove, and I didn't care. How bad is it? I asked, before I'd even decided I wanted to know. He looked at me for a second longer than usual, checking, I think, whether I actually wanted the real answer or the polite one. I'd learned that look over 4 months of marriage. It meant he was deciding how much of his work to let into our kitchen. Bad, he said finally. Runway's about 3 weeks. Payroll for 11 people. A lease in Soho they can't get out of. If they don't close a round by the 20th, they're done. 3 weeks. I did the math without meaning to. The 20th was 19 days away. And she's coming to you, I said. Not a question either. She's coming to the fund. I run the fund. He said it plainly, no weight on it, but I felt the floor tilt a little anyway. I want to be honest about what happened to me right then, because it wasn't what you'd expect from someone who just found the ledger tipped in her favor after 15 years. There was no spark of triumph. What I felt instead was something closer to vertigo, like standing at the top of a staircase I hadn't built and hadn't asked to be standing on. Julian. I put my hand flat on the folder, over Kohli Ventures, Priya Kohli, founder and CEO, the tab facing up at me like it had been printed, just to unsettle me. You should give this to someone else on your team. Renee or whoever. You shouldn't be the one deciding on my friend's company. She's not your friend, he said. Still gentle. Still no heat in it. You told me that yourself. Twice, actually, once about the wedding, once about the birthday party. I didn't have an answer for that because he was right, and being right didn't make it feel less complicated. Even so, I said, it could look like something it isn't, or something it is. I don't even know which one I'm afraid of. He reached over and turned my hand palm up, laced his fingers through mine, the way he did when he wanted me to actually hear him instead of just wait for him to finish. I don't evaluate companies, he said. I evaluate the people running them. Spreadsheets tell you what happened. They don't tell you who you're in business with for the next 7 years. That part 1 don't delegate. That sounds like a very convenient principle to have right now. The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile, gone fast. Same principle I had in March before I knew who you were marrying into. He tapped the folder once. This isn't about you. It's about whether I trust what's in here. Right now I don't. Fully. That has nothing to do with a wedding invitation that never got answered. That landed somewhere under my ribs. He didn't say it to wound me. Julian never did anything to wound me. That wasn't his currency, but the plainness of it was its own kind of blade. I trust what's in here. He'd said it like a man reading a thermometer, and I realized I still didn't know exactly what not fully meant, or what he'd already found. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, then held it up so I could see the name before he answered. Renee. He put her on speaker, still watching my face the way you'd watch someone's hands during a card trick. Sorry to call so late, Renee said, brisk even through the small speaker. I went through Coley Ventures again before tomorrow. 3 of their reported enterprise clients. I called all 3 direct lines, not the ones listed in the deck. 2 of them said they're in a pilot phase, unpaid. Not the 6-figure annual contracts in the revenue table. I felt my stomach drop somewhere I didn't expect it to. Not glee. Something closer to grief for the version of Priya I used to believe in, back when we split a $6 coffee 2 ways because neither of us could afford one alone. And the 3rd client? Julian asked. Doesn't exist. No such contact, no such contract, nothing in their CRM matching the name on the page. A pause, papers shifting on her end. It's not sloppy, Julian. It's dressed too carefully to be sloppy. He thanked her, told her to keep pulling threads, and hung up. The kitchen was very quiet after that, just the dishwasher, and somewhere outside a siren fading toward the river. Nora. He said my name like he was setting something down carefully in front of me. There's a diligence meeting Monday. Investors, her team must. He paused, and for the first time all night, he looked almost hesitant. Renee asked me something on the way in, he said. She asked if I wanted the founder's own personal acquaintance sitting in on the diligence meeting. Someone who'd know if she's telling the truth. He looked at me and didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. The phone rang at 12:41 in the morning. I almost didn't answer. Julian's arm was heavy across my waist, and the room still smelled faintly of the eucalyptus candle I'd let burn too long. But I saw the name on the screen, Dana Witt, and something in me sat up before my body did. Hello. There was breathing first.
Vet, uneven.
Then her voice cracked down the middle.
Nora.
I need you to not hang up on me. I'm not going to hang up on you, Dana. I slid out of bed and into the hallway, pulling the bedroom door shut behind me. Julian stirred but didn't wake. I've been sitting in my car outside my apartment for 40 minutes, she said. I couldn't go inside. I keep thinking about your wedding. I leaned against the wall, cold plaster against my shoulder blade. Okay. It wasn't an accident. Us not being there. Her breath hitched. Priya planned it. I didn't say anything. I let the silence do the asking. 6 weeks before your wedding, she called an emergency meeting. Not about the startup. About you. Dana's words came fast now, like she'd been holding them behind her teeth for months. She said if we all showed up for your wedding and skipped her birthday, it would look bad for Verdant Circle. Investors follow her page. She needed the room full. She needed the photos to look a certain way. She said. Dana stopped.
Said what?
She said, Nora will understand. She always does. I stared at the crack running down the hallway paint, the one Julian kept saying he'd patch. Somewhere behind me, the refrigerator hummed. I thought about the 4 empty chairs at the Hudson Valley venue, the caterer quietly removing place settings before dinner service. I went along with it, Dana said. I want you to hear me say that. I didn't fight her. I told myself it was just one day, that you'd forgive us, because you always do. And now I hate that I knew that about you, and used it. I found my voice, flat and even. Why are you calling me now, Dana? Not 6 weeks ago. Not 6 days ago. Now. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, something in her tone had shifted, less confession, more warning. Because 2 weeks ago, Priya cut me out of Verdant Circle.
Completely.
No severance, no equity buyout, nothing. I was the one who did the investor demos, Nora. I was the face of the company at 3 pitch events. Her voice dropped. I signed things I shouldn't have signed. And when I asked questions, she told our whole friend group I was having a hard time and not a team player. She turned Marcus against me in 4 days. I closed my eyes. What kind of things? 2 pilot clients who never paid $1. 1 client who doesn't exist. I have the deck. I have the email where she told me to update the slide before a board meeting. Dana's voice cracked again. I still have everything, Nora. Every group chat. Going back 6 years. I never deleted a single one. I think some part of me knew I'd need it someday. My pulse picked up, quiet and steady, like a second clock ticking under my skin. Send it to me. I already did. Check your email. I walked into the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and opened my laptop on the counter. The screen lit the dark room blue. A file was sitting there, 41 megabytes, titled simply Graphic Archive.
I didn't open it yet.
My hand hovered over the trackpad.
Dana.
Why keep it this long? Because reading it back made me feel sick every time I saw your name in there.
A breath.
The worker bee. The wedding planner slushie. I used to laugh at those messages, Nora.
I want you to know that.
I laughed, and then I felt awful, and then I laughed again the next time because it was easier than saying something. I didn't tell her it was fine. It wasn't fine. But I didn't need to say that to know it, and neither did she. Colin's light was still on down the hall of my memory. No, he wasn't here. He was 3 miles away, probably closing out the bar, but I found myself wishing he was standing in this kitchen with me, arms crossed, telling me exactly what to feel. I didn't need him to. I already knew. There's something else, Dana said, and her voice went very quiet, the kind of quiet people use right before they say the thing they called to say. Priya knows who Julian is now. She found out 2 days ago. Someone at Verdant Circle mentioned the fund's name, and she put it together herself. The kitchen felt suddenly too bright, too still. She's not calling him, Dana said. She's planning to go through you. I set my phone down and finished drying the wine glass in my hand. Priya, texting me now after everything. Of course. The doorbell rang 11 minutes later. I opened it to Priya holding a bouquet of white ranunculus, cellophane still crinkling, and Marcus behind her with a bottle bag from a store that didn't do gift wrap for anything under $50. Priya's face arranged itself into something soft before I'd even gotten the door halfway open. Nora. She said my name like it hurt her to have waited this long. I know we don't deserve 5 minutes. But can we have 5 minutes? Julian appeared behind me, one hand resting light on the small of my back. He didn't say anything. He just watched. We brought dinner, Marcus said, lifting the bag like evidence. Well, reservations. Hudson Farmstead, 8 o'clock if you'll let us. I should have said no. I want to be honest about that because the version of this story where I was wise the whole way through is not the true one. I looked at the flowers. I looked at Priya's eyes, which were doing a very good impression of wet. Some tired, hopeful part of me leaned toward yes, the part that had spent 15 years wanting these 4 people to finally see me.
Give me a minute, I said.
We drove up together, Julian quiet at the wheel, Priya and Marcus following in her car. At the restaurant, Priya cried a little over the bread basket. Not performing crying. Or, it didn't look like it. She talked about her mother's diagnosis 2 years ago, about how it had made her realize life was short and friendships mattered more than pride, about how ashamed she'd felt watching my wedding photos online. I have thought about it every single day, she said, dabbing under her eye with a napkin corner. The empty chairs. Nora, I would take it back if I could. Marcus nodded along, refilling wine he wasn't drinking much of.
We were selfish, he said.
All of us. I've been meaning to send you the 6,000 for years, and I just kept finding reasons not to. That's on me. Julian said little through the appetizers. He asked Priya 2 questions about her company, polite, generic, the kind of small talk anyone makes. She answered with the ease of someone who'd rehearsed exactly those answers for exactly this kind of dinner. I noticed that. Then I let myself unnotice it because noticing felt unkind, and I was trying hard, that night, to be the kind of person who gives people a second door. Halfway through the entrées, Priya's phone buzzed against the table. She glanced at the screen, exhaled like it was nothing, and stood. Investor thing, sorry, I have to take this. 2 minutes. She smiled at me on her way past. Don't let them start dessert without me. She walked toward the restrooms, phone already at her ear, voice dropping into that register people use when they think a hallway makes them invisible. I told myself I wasn't going to listen. I stood up 30 seconds later anyway, on the excuse of the restroom myself. The hallway carried her voice back to me clean off the stone floor. No, listen, he's not going to take a cold call from me, obviously, but she'll get me in the room. She always does. That's what she's for. A pause. A short laugh, dry as chalk. The worker bee finally married a hive with money in it. I know. Just let me handle Nora. She's easy. She just wants to feel included. Text me the deck one more time before Monday. I stood very still. The hallway smelled like candle wax and dish soap, from the kitchen door propped open somewhere behind me. In the dining room, I could hear the low murmur of Marcus talking to Julian, and Julian's voice, even and unreadable, answering something short. I did not go into the restroom. I walked back to the table. Marcus looked up, mid-sentence about some vacation he and his wife were planning, and smiled at me like I'd missed nothing. Julian's eyes found mine as I sat. Something in his face wasn't quite a question. It was more like waiting. He'd clocked something too, I realized, even though he couldn't have heard what I heard. Priya returned 2 minutes later, sliding back into her chair with an easy, sorry, where were we? She reached over and squeezed my hand once, warm, brief, sisterly. I'm just so glad we're doing this, she said. So glad you didn't shut the door on us. I looked at her hand on mine. I thought about the $6,000. I thought about 4 empty chairs under a white tent in Hudson Valley. I thought about a caption that said 36 and thriving, grateful for my real ones. I thought about a hallway that still smelled faintly of candle wax behind me. Me too, I said. I smiled. I picked my fork back up. Under the table, out of sight, my hand found Julian's knee and pressed it once, deliberately, the way we never needed to signal anything to each other before. Actually, I said, turning to Priya, my voice warm and easy, exactly the voice she wanted to hear. I was thinking we should set up a real evening. All of us. You, Marcus, Dana. Meet Julian properly this time. Priya's whole face lit like I'd handed her something she'd been starving for. I'd love that, she said. So would I thought. So would I. And I smiled again, wider this time, because now I knew exactly what kind of evening it was going to be. The conference room on the 22nd floor smelled like fresh coffee and cold air conditioning. I sat in the last chair by the window, the one Renee had pointed to without asking why I wanted it. Julian sat at the head of the table. He hadn't looked at me since I walked in. Priya arrived 4 minutes late, which for her was early. She wore a cream blazer I recognized from a fitting room in Soho, the one she'd sent me a photo of last spring asking if it made her look founder enough. She scanned the room, found Julian, then found me, and her shoulders dropped an inch, like she'd been holding her breath since the elevator. Nora, she said, warm, like we hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. I didn't know you'd be here. I didn't either, I said. It was true. She took the seat across from Julian, set her tablet down, angled it just slightly toward him instead of the room. 2 of his partners flanked her, a man named Osei and a woman I didn't recognize, both with legal pads and untouched coffee. Renee sat beside Julian, a folder in front of her thicker than the others. Thank you all for making time, Julian said. His voice was the same one he used ordering takeout. Level. Unhurried. Renee's going to walk us through the diligence findings before we open it up. Her team looked at 4 separate service providers before we sat down today. Priya nodded like this was a formality. She glanced at me again, a small private smile, the kind you give an ally in a room full of strangers. Renee opened the folder. Verdant Circle reported 11 active enterprise clients as of the March deck. She turned her laptop screen toward the table. We reached out to all 11 for reference calls. Standard process, Priya said, still smiling. 2 confirmed as pilot programs, unpaid, with no signed contract extending past a 90-day trial period that ended in January. Renee's tone didn't change. 1 client listed, Halden Foods, has no record of engagement with Verdant Circle. Their VP of Ops had never heard the company name. The smile stayed on Priya's face a second too long before it started to slide. That's an old deck, Priya said. We update our client list constantly. I can send. This is the deck your team submitted 11 days ago, Renee said, and turned the laptop so the timestamp faced the table. Osei wrote something on his legal pad. The woman beside him didn't write anything. She just watched Priya's hands, which had started rearranging pens that didn't need rearranging. I felt something in my chest that wasn't triumph.
It was quieter than that.
It was the feeling of watching a door that had been jammed shut for 15 years finally give. Julian didn't gloat. He didn't even raise his eyebrows. Priya, walk us through Halden Foods. There was a soft agreement, verbally, at a conference in Austin. Verbal agreements don't go in a revenue projection, Osei said. Not unkindly, just a fact, dropped flat on the table. Priya's eyes moved around the room, looking for a friendly face, and landed on me again. This time, there was nothing warm in it. It was closer to panic dressed up as familiarity. Runway, Renee continued, at current burn is 19 days. 3 weeks if you round generously. The deck says 4 months. 19 days. I did the math without meaning to. She'd been smiling at a rooftop party in June with a countdown already running under her feet. 11 employees on payroll, and by Renee's count, 0 of those 11 clients under a real, signed contract. So, of the 11 logos on the slide, Julian said, how many are paying you right now? The room waited. Priya opened her mouth, closed it. 0, Renee said, when the silence went on too long. 0 of 11. Priya's hand found the edge of the table. I think there's context missing here. Nora. Her voice cracked on my name, just slightly, theatrical or real. I genuinely couldn't tell anymore. Nora, you know me. You know I wouldn't. Can you just... She looked around the table, at Julian, at Osei, back at me, desperation arranging itself into something that almost looked like dignity. Nora, say something for me. Please. 1 word. The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when everyone has decided to watch the same person. I set my coffee down. I stood up. I opened my phone. The screen lit my face before it lit the room. The Verdant Circle boardroom smelled like fresh paint and burnt coffee, the kind of room built to look expensive rather than be comfortable. Glass walls. A skyline nobody was looking at. 12 chairs, only 9 filled. I did not scroll to find what I wanted. I already knew where it was. I had read it 40 times since Dana sent the archive, a file named Griffith Archive, 41 megabytes of 5 years, sitting in my downloads folder like a loaded drawer I kept opening and closing until the word stopped hurting and became something closer to a set of directions. I have something to share, I said. It's short. Julian did not move. Renee set her pen down without a sound. Across the table, the 2 partners from the fund, a woman named Ilsa Park and a man I only knew as Grow, looked up from the printouts of Verdant Circle's fabricated client list. Behind me, near the door, Colin shifted his weight but said nothing. He'd come as my ride, not a witness, and now he was both. Priya's mouth opened. Nora, this isn't the place. You said that already, I said. At dinner. In the hallway, actually. You didn't know I could hear you. I watched that land. Marcus shifted in his chair, the leather creaking under him. Dana, seated 1 chair down from Priya, kept her eyes on the table, her hands folded like she was at a funeral for something she'd already grieved in private. I read from the screen, my voice even, pitched for a room, not for a fight. March 14th, group chat, Priya Kohli.
What?
Nora's still doing the free labor thing. God bless the worker bee. End quote. Nobody laughed this time. Ilsa Park's pen had stopped moving too. March 20th. Marcus Reed.
꽃?
Some of us peaked in the right decade. Some of us are still catering other people's happiness for free. End quote. Marcus's jaw worked like he wanted to say something and couldn't find the shape of it. I kept my eyes on the phone, not on him. I had promised myself that much. I would not perform this. I would just deliver it. April 2nd. Priya Kohli.
꽃?
If the investor asks about the pilot clients, just say they're finalizing paperwork.
Nobody checks our fucking idea.
End quote. Renee's head came up sharply. She looked at the printout in front of her, then back at me. That's the two pilots, she said, quiet, mostly to Julian. The ones marked signed, no signature on file. Neither has paid $1. Keep going, Julian said. He hadn't looked at Priya once. He was looking at me the way he looked at a term sheet, reading for what was actually there. I read 3 more. One where Dana had asked, tentatively, if maybe they should invite me to something, and Priya had answered, quote, why, so she can cry about being left out again, it's not that deep. One where Marcus joked about the $6,000 he owed me, calling it, quote, an involuntary donation to the Nora Foundation. One, the last one, dated 3 days before my wedding, where Priya had written, quote, everyone confirmed for Saturday, my place, don't let the wedding thing guilt you into flaking, it's one afternoon, she'll get over it. I set the phone down on the table, face up this time, not hiding anything anymore. There's an 11th client listed in your investor deck, I said, turning to Priya for the first time. Foss Analytics. I called Renee this morning and asked her to check the number on file for it. It's disconnected. Not busy. Not out of service temporarily. Disconnected, like it was never real to begin with. The room went very still. I heard the air conditioning cycle on somewhere above us, a low mechanical hum filling the silence, like something exhaling. Nora. Priya's voice had lost its polish. You don't understand what's riding on this. I understand exactly what's riding on it, I said. 19 days of runway. 11 employees. 0 of the 11 listed clients under actual contract. I understand it because Renee told my husband, and my husband tells me things because, unlike some people, he doesn't think I'm too small to hear the truth. Grow exchanged a look with Ilsa Park that I didn't need translated. Dana finally lifted her eyes from the table, not toward Priya, toward me, and I saw something in her face that looked almost like relief, the particular relief of a person who no longer has to hold up a lie by herself. I'm not here for revenge, I said. And I meant it, though I felt something in my chest unclench as I said it, some 15-year-old not finally coming loose. I'm here because you asked me 3 days ago, over dinner you paid for, to help you get this money. And I think the people in this room deserve to know exactly who they'd be trusting with it. Julian stood. He buttoned his jacket, an unhurried, almost old-fashioned gesture that somehow carried more weight than if he'd raised his voice. The fund is withdrawing from consideration, he said. Not because of any personal history at this table. Because due diligence found fabricated client relationships and inflated revenue projections, corroborated independently by internal communications. That's an integrity finding. It goes in the file as exactly that. Marcus made a sound like he was going to object, and then didn't. He looked for a moment, like a man doing math on a debt he could no longer avoid paying in more ways than one. Ilsa Park was the one who broke the silence that followed, turning to Priya with the flat, professional voice of someone closing a door she'd already mentally walked through. Just so I understand, she said. Was there ever a real client? Any of them? Priya looked at the table, then at me, then back at Ilsa Park. No, she said. The Verdant Circle sign came down on a Tuesday. I know because Colin sent me a photo of the Soho lease space, empty, a paper taped to the glass door that just said unit available. He didn't caption it. He didn't have to. The story moved through the industry the way these things do, quietly then all at once. Ilsa Park pulled her firm's interest within the week. Grove followed 9 days later. By the time a trade blog ran 3 paragraphs about governance concerns at a once promising logistics startup, there was nothing left to save. 11 employees. 0 real contracts. 19 days of runway that never got a 20th. I didn't check the blog again after that first time. I didn't need to. Marcus showed up on a Thursday in May unannounced, standing on my studio's front step with an envelope in his hand like it was something he'd rehearsed carrying. I opened the door in my work clothes, pin still in my hair from a fitting. "I wanted to catch you in person," he said. I didn't invite him in. We stood in the doorway, the studio's ribbon spools visible behind me, and he held out the envelope. 6,000, he said. Should have been 6,000 plus 4 years of interest, I know. But it's what I've got. I opened it. Cash, folded in half, a rubber band around it like he'd counted it twice before he left his apartment. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it because a debt is a debt regardless of who's paying it back. "Look," Marcus said, shifting his weight. "What happened with Priya, that wasn't on me. I didn't know about the fake contracts. I was just there for the party." I looked at him for a second longer than was comfortable. "You were there for the party instead of my wedding, Marcus." His jaw worked. I know, and I'm sorry, I really am." "You're sorry you had to drive here and hand me cash," I said, not unkindly, just plainly, the way I'd say a delivery was running late. That's different from sorry. He didn't have an answer for that. He said something about staying in touch, and I said sure the way you say sure to a stranger who holds a door for you, and he left. I put the envelope on the kitchen counter that night, and didn't touch it for 3 days, like it might still be warm. Dana called 2 weeks later, and I almost let it go to voicemail out of old habit before I remembered that habit no longer applied. "I'm not calling to ask for anything," she said first, before I'd said more than hello. "I just wanted to tell you I got the Meridian job.
Full-time.
Benefits." "Dana, that's wonderful. I wanted you to hear it from me and not from," she stopped. "Not from the group chat that doesn't exist anymore." I laughed, actually laughed, standing in my kitchen with the tap running. We talked for 40 minutes. Not about Priya, mostly. About her new commute, about a dog she was thinking of adopting, about the fact that she'd started therapy in April and her therapist had asked her to write down every apology she'd meant and every one she hadn't, side by side, to see which list was longer. "Guess which list won," she said. "I have a guess." "Yeah." A pause. "I'm working on it. I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I just wanted you to know I'm working on it." That's the sentence Marcus never said. Working on it. Not "I'm sorry," followed by a request. Just the work, offered with nothing attached. Priya texted once in June. "I'm not going to pretend none of this happened because of you. You could have warned me privately. You chose to humiliate me in front of investors instead. I hope that felt good." I read it twice, the way I'd once read a different text twice at my own kitchen counter years ago before setting a phone face down and going back to folding napkins. This time I didn't set it face down. I typed one line back. "I warned you for 15 years, Priya. You just never listened when it wasn't in a room with money in it." She never replied. I didn't expect her to. Julian found me on the porch that evening, the Hudson Valley light doing the thing it does in June, gold and heavy through the trees near the barn where we'd married. He sat down next to me, without asking what I was looking at. "You didn't gloat," he said. "Not once. I keep waiting for you to gloat." "I don't want to win against them," I said. "I just don't want to lose myself to them anymore. Those are different things." He took my hand, and we didn't say anything else for a while, and it was enough. The kind of quiet that used to feel like absence and now just felt like rest. It was October when the letter came. Handwritten, cream envelope, my studio's address copied out carefully in blue ink, no return address I recognized. I turned it over once in my hands, checking the postmark, before I set it on the counter unopened. It wasn't Priya's handwriting. I knew that much before I even slid a finger under the flap. The paper was thick, cream-colored, the kind you'd use for a wedding invitation rather than a note. I recognized the handwriting once I opened it. Loops too neat for a text-obsessed generation, the letters of someone who'd learned cursive before it went out of style. I set my coffee down on the kitchen island and read. "Nora, I don't expect you to write back. I just needed to say this somewhere that wasn't a screen. I stopped talking to Priya 3 years ago. I never told anyone why. I found out she'd told a mutual friend I couldn't be trusted around money, the same year I asked her for a $200 loan to cover rent after my mother's hospital bill. She said no. Then she said that. I let it go because saying something felt like more trouble than it was worth. I'm the fourth chair. The one who never texted an excuse on your wedding day because I didn't need one. I simply never planned to come, and I was ashamed enough not to say why. I saw the group chat. I saw Worker B. I laughed once a long time ago at something about you I don't even remember now, and I never apologized, and I told myself that not showing up was its own kind of apology. It wasn't. I heard what happened at the funding meeting from Dana. She said you didn't raise your voice once. I don't know why that detail stayed with me more than anything else. I think it's because I always assumed people like you eventually get loud, and it always disappointed me a little when you didn't. Now I think that not being loud was the whole point. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that somebody read every word.
Ren.
I read it twice, then set it on the counter next to a bowl of clementines Julian had left half-peeled that morning. Colin walked in from the guest room, barefoot, holding his own coffee, and looked at the letter like it might bite him. Who's Ren? He said. The fourth one, I said. The one who never even bothered with an excuse. He read it over my shoulder, quiet, the way he got when he was deciding whether to say something sharp or something kind.
He chose kind.
She's not wrong about the loud part. I picked up a clementine and peeled it slowly, the way you do when your hands need something to do while your head catches up. No, I said. She's not. You gonna write back? Eventually, I looked at the letter again. Not tonight. 15 years is a long time to mistake being needed for being loved. I built a whole identity out of being the one who shows up, the one who drapes the tool, wires the deposit, holds the door open at 2 a.m. for a friend's crisis that was never really a crisis, just a want dressed up as one. I told myself that was generosity.
Some of it was.
But somewhere in their generosity became a habit. I couldn't stop even when it was killing something in me, one favor at a time, one unreturned $6,000 at a time. I didn't burn Priya down out of hatred. I want to be precise about that. Even now, even to myself. I gave Renee nothing she hadn't already found on her own. I read messages that were already true. All I did was stop protecting people who had never once protected me. Marcus texted again in September, a single line. Hope you're doing well. No mention of the money. No mention of the wedding, as if enough time had passed that the debt of memory had also matured and come due for forgiveness he hadn't earned. Are you going to answer him? Colin asked, reading over my shoulder before I could lock the screen.
No.
I set the phone face down on the counter. Some doors you don't have to slam. You just don't open them again. Dana came over for dinner 2 weeks later. She brought wine and an actual bottle opener because she remembered ours was broken, a small thing, but small things are how you tell who's paying attention. Julian made pasta. Colin told an unfunny bartending story that made all four of us laugh anyway, the kind of laugh that comes easier when nobody's performing for anyone. You look lighter, Dana said quietly, while Julian and Colin argued about Parmesan in the kitchen. I feel lighter, I said. Turns out you can put a bag down. Nobody mentioned Priya's name once, and the silence around it wasn't heavy. It was just clean. I wrote back to Ren, eventually one line. Thank you for saying it somewhere that wasn't a screen. Here's what 15 years of being the worker bee taught me, the only sentence I'd underline if someone asked me to sum it up. You don't have to burn yourself to keep other people warm. You just have to stop lighting the match. If this story felt like your own, you already know what to do with it.